Welcome again to Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. We are back again today with another Prestige Class. Prestige Class is our series where we just sit down with a creator or somebody in the tabletop role-playing game industry, and we talk a little bit about the work that they do and see what lessons we can learn from that. Today, I am joined by Michael Lombardi. Michael, go ahead and say hi to people. Also, tell them where they can find you on the internet also.
Sure. Hi, I'm Mike Lombardi. I'm a really bad software engineer by day and a worse game developer by night. I describe myself as mostly a kit bash enthusiast more than a designer. That feels very pretentious. You can find me on Twitter at TrepuchetOps, spelled like the War Machine and then OPS. And you can find me. That's pretty much it. I mean, nobody wants to check out well, you might want to check out my code when we talk about digital tools, I guess. You can find me everywhere else on the internet at Michael T. Lombardi.
There we go. And you know, people are already commenting about the beards. Yes, when Michael said, "Can I come on your show?" What was I already going to say? Yes, because of the beard. Absolutely. But I promise, though we have a beard bias, we actually try to actively avoid just having bearded people on stream also too. But today we are going to be talking a little bit about just kind of, Michael, your experience of design. You've got a game up right now on Kickstarter. We'll come back to that a little bit at the end as we've kind of walked through a couple other pieces and talk about how your experiences and your skills are impacting that project specifically. But give us kind of the elevator pitch for the Catalogue Chimerical also too.
Yeah, so Catalogue Chimerical is a 36-page zine of 144 system-agnostic magic items written from the perspective of a scholar in the Pentolan setting, which is where I spend most of my time developing. Sort of a magical mail-order catalog where people back in the scholar's hometown are able to buy stuff from this weird fantasy city. And so it's sort of my love letter to writing magic items that are interesting and have more than just mechanics. I don't know about you, but whenever it's like you get a +1 sword, you're like, cool, what does it look like? What does it do? What's +1? Great. And then it's also a further exploration of gameable lore, which has been something that I've been sort of smashing my head into the bell for. Insofar as these items are a look into this world and the setting without making you do homework, right? You learn a little bit about what the place is like by picking up these items and taking a look at them.
That's awesome. I love it. I can't wait to talk a little bit more about it. But go ahead and tell me, like, you've done some other design work. You have a couple other projects that you've done. This isn't your first rodeo. Tell us about kind of your initial foray into the world of design. What made you initially interested in designing?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, I had been a longtime referee writing my own content for my own table. And you do enough of that work and you're like, surely somebody else must care about the hundreds of hours I've poured into this. And then you go and you find an RPG group somewhere. I sort of flailed around on RPG Reddit and on Facebook for a while and got nowhere. I joined Twitter for completely unrelated reasons for my tech stuff. And then stumbled backwards into the RPG design community there right after G+ had exploded. And so there were a whole bunch of people who were suddenly having all these design conversations in public and chatting and sharing and iterating. And I ran very early on into Dungeons and Possums, who welcomed me in with both arms. And we bonded a lot over being fallen Catholic buddies doing RPG design. And I sort of modeled how I behave in this space after Possums, just continuously uplifting people, getting hyped about projects. Like one of the first things I learned when I came into the space was like, if it excites you, talk about it. In fact, yell about it, because visibility is the thing that everybody's fighting.
Yeah.
And so that same year was the first Zine Quest, which I was doing a little side experiment for like how much stuff can you cram on a single piece of paper? The answer is quite a bit. And I mentioned offhandedly that technically a single piece of paper folded in half met the conditions for a zine for Zine Quest. Mm-hmm. And Don Strad, who was doing Lesser Key to the Celestial Legion at the time, hit me back and was like, so do it then. And I was like, "Are you sure?" And he was like, "What happens if like, yeah, do it. What's the worst that happens? You don't fund? It's like $300 is what you're looking at asking for." So I did, and then I made the wonderful and terrible mistake of pulling in 21 contributors. We had a great project and a complete shit show as far as project management goes, because it turns out managing 5 or 6 people is very, very hard. Managing 21 people in parallel is a hellscape I never want to go back to.
And did you guys stick with a 1-page project for those 21 people?
Yep. So there ended up being 16 zines with 21 collaborators, 21 unique collaborators. So we some people redid art. I redid writing for a couple. And it was like in my head, I was like, well, everybody will write their zine at the same time. And then we can just give the zine that month to like, because all of them have different artists. So like worst case scenario, it's going to take like what, 3 months? That was foolishly optimistic, not just in terms of like people are not going to hit that deadline that you set, but also in terms of like you are incapable of wrangling 21 people to deadlines in a single month. Like it's just not feasible. But it ended up being okay. We turned out, I think, a pretty great packet of zines, which was I messed up my estimates for shipping, so I ended up eating a bunch of shipping costs that year, which everybody does on their first Kickstarter, I think. I had thought like, well, it's going to be $1 domestic and like no more than $5 international, and it ended up being like $4 domestic and $24 international. I was like, cool, yep.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's really easy to underestimate. Like, hey, well, like mailing a letter just cost 42 cents. So like if you're mailing a really thick one, it's got to just cost $1. And people don't realize that once things get to a certain thickness, you kick up a level, you know, unless you want to go with media mail, and media mail just means reshipping some more things once everything's invariably get lost. Yeah, and international is just always kind of a crapshoot. So, you know, whenever I see somebody's got $3 shipping, I'm like, okay, you're probably using media mail, or you've just decided to eat $2 worth of shipping, which is fine. Yep. It's a fine choice to have. You know, it's one of the fun things about running a Kickstarter is figuring out how badly the shipping things are going to change, and they never change in your favor. And I
felt so bad for everybody who did a Kickstarter February of last year before we had any idea what was coming in terms of like post office breakdowns. And that was just great.
Thanks. No, I'm just kidding. I run an e-commerce company by day, and so I am. If anybody is prepared for the fluctuations in shipping market, I am. And I just was like, oh, well, I'll charge $5 and that'll cover it. And it does. Like charging $5 will cover your US postage by and large, unless you put a bunch of add-ons in there. But we get access, like you get access. There's other ways you can access better rates if you're shipper savvy. And we know how to do that with a great team that helps me figure all that out. And even still, like you still end up not making as much money as you think you're going to make on any of that. So, yeah, absolutely. But it's such a kind of fun process to dive in and get in there. So that was kind of your first foray in there, you know, and it was just kind of this interest you had in how many things can you fit on a page. What are some of the would you say hallmarks of your design, and how do you approach things? Like I know a team approach is kind of an important thing for you, but are there some other hallmarks of the way that you do design?
Yeah. So one of the major things is if you look at my design across like the I'll use a pretentious word because I can't think of one that fits here, is corpus, right? If you look across like the body of my design work, one thing you find is that I am not very net new creative. I don't typically come up with a lot of stuff where you're like, this is entirely unfamiliar. What is this? But what I am good at, I think, what seems to resonate with people at least, is kit bashing, right? So term comes from long in the long ago for people who were doing model trains and stuff, where you want something that there isn't actually an existing model set for. So you take pieces from different models, some putty, some glue, your hobby knife, and you make the thing that you can't find. I do the functional equivalent of that in games, I think, where I just take different pieces and stick them together, see how that works. In particular, like probably the best recent example I have of that is my take on rumor tables, which I put in Tempting to Fra last year, which mashes up clocks with timelines and then iterates a little bit on top of those. So if you're familiar with Dead Planet or with A Pound of Flesh, both of those mothership modules have these timelines of things that'll happen if the players don't get involved, right? Players send everything off the rails, but it's like, if the players ignore this, this is how much worse things will get,
right,
and how long it takes. So the only real iteration that I did on top of that was one, I added a random ticking clock to it, so it's not definite when the stuff advances. And then two, I just added a little subsystem for what type of information is available with how much effort at each tick. So if it's apparent, you just know it, you just tell it to the players. If it's discoverable, they have to do a little bit of digging, like ask around town or whatever, and somebody will turn it up for them. And if it's secret, they have to be like really, truly involved, like hunting for the stuff in order to discover it.
Awesome.
And I found in practice that was a lot of fun. Plus, I throw a bunch of these at players all at once. It's like, there's 7 things going on. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Knowing that they know that it's all going to keep ticking whether or not they get involved.
Right. And then they decide to do the 8th thing anyways. Like it doesn't.
Right. We're going to rob a bank. All right.
No, that's awesome. I also will say we've got about 9 people watching right now. For every 12 people we get on stream, Michael, you did throw this out earlier today. I thought it was really cool. You said you made an offer. So go ahead and tell people what that offer is, because I want to incentivize people to hop out there and share this stream right now if they haven't yet on social media.
Yep. So for every 12 unique viewers that the stream gets, and afterwards I'll have Tony send me the final number count. For every 12 unique viewers that the stream gets, I'm going to go ahead and add another bonus item, which I will throw up on the Catalogue Chimerical website where I'm keeping all the bonus stuff. And that means that people will have access to it right away, and whether or not the rest of the thing funds, right? So yeah. I'm going to leave that website up.
Cool. No, I'm super excited, but I want to just encourage people, go out, share. I'm pulling from across all platforms, and I'll get those numbers from across all platforms. So, share it wherever you want to, wherever you're watching this right now. Just let some other people know about it. Let's get some extra bonus items up on that. Cause I've been blown away. Like you were just sharing some with me last night, and I was getting more and more excited about it. Already very excited about the project. But also you just mentioned, putting things up on the website. So let's talk a little bit about that. One of the things that you are known for is kind of taking your engineering, your software, your kind of the digital toolkit that you have, and using those to create some additional digital tools and models for how game content can be put out. And I asked a little bit about this right before we started, but essentially being that like PDFs kind of suck as a digital tool, but they're what everybody uses because we're making them anyways. What are some of the other digital tools out there that you're kind of exploring and experimenting with that you think designers should take note of?
Yeah, one of the big things that I've been working on off and on for the past several months is a tool called Platin. I was working on that with Monday, who did Rasp of Sand, and a friend of Monday's, Thomas, who does front-end development. So in my day job, I'm actually like a back-end infrastructure engineer type. My web chops are not super great. But the idea, the end goal for Platin tooling is right now, it is an exorbitant amount of work for a game designer to get a web version of their game up, right? It requires knowing how to write all the code and like testing everything, and like, you have to know not just the HTML that goes into it, but you also have to know the CSS and the JavaScript, and like learning one language is usually hard enough for people, let alone like, oh, you got to learn all 3 simultaneously. You can do that, right?
Right.
So what this does is this builds on top of an existing static site tooling, which just means that you can host the sites anywhere. They don't require a server, called Hugo. And so the idea for it is that we're going to build this little toolkit that comes with documentation and guidelines and examples and help. And so you write in some plain text in a very lightweight language called Markdown, which looks a lot like the notes that you keep in plain text, right? You do like a pound sign for a title. You wrap stuff in asterisks when you want to make it emphasized, that sort of thing. Lists work the way you think, that kind of stuff. And so then you would write your stuff in Markdown for your draft, and you can export Google Docs to Markdown too, that works. And then that will turn into a website, right? So you don't have to do any extra work for like, oh, how do I code this, that, or the other thing? We're working with Deep Anyway on the mnemonic site for our first kind of live example of it. And D has just run absolutely buck wild with styling. Like I said, I'm not very design oriented. I don't have like a good brain for that. They absolutely do. And like the screenshots and stuff they've been sending me for mnemonic look great.
That's awesome.
But it also includes like interactivity stuff. Like so like one problem with PDFs, right, is there's roll tables. Well, you're on a computer, you should be able to click the roll table, right? It's kind of baffling that we can't do that. And so it just builds stuff like that in place. If you go to like a dungeon map, you should be able to hover over sections of the map and get the key and click on it to go to it. And just a whole bunch of little things like that are kind of on the backlog to implement so that you can get a whole lot of functionality, take advantage of being on a computer.
Yeah.
Instead of not.
Yeah, I remember the first time somebody just linked something in a PDF, and I was like, "Well, crap! Why aren't people just like? I mean, even if you're just taking PDFs and using them better, like that's a huge step up. Like chaptering them, you know, like making things searchable, linking to other places in the document, linking to online content, and we started doing a little bit of that with when we put out Beards and Beyond. Like we started linking stuff up because it was like, well. Like, yeah, you should just be able to, if you have the electronic version of this, rather than saying, yeah, this toolkit's online, click on it, go to that toolkit, download the stuff to whatever device you happen to be on. But the reality is that still, like, PDFs aren't, they will do that. That is not what they were designed for originally. And so it can be a complicated process to make that stuff work. And usually they're not formatted for the device correctly in the end anyways.
Well, yeah, because most people are making PDFs. For most folks, turn up because they need to make a PDF for something to be printable, either professionally or at home. So a PDF is a digital output artifact secondary to the print concerns, right? Like the expectation is not necessarily that you'll run your games from PDFs. Now, PDFs that are designed that way and laid out that way are much better. Like anytime I come across like a digital PDF, or like a digital format PDF, and they're in landscape, I get excited because it's like, oh, this will actually look good on my computer. I can read this. But also, as Umbra pointed out in the chat, you can make PDFs interactable. It is just an enormous amount of work and requires functionally the same amount of wizardry, I think, for most people as like doing website development does.
Well, and Markdown is amazing. Like, and I do you follow the stuff that Monocle Society is doing with Weave at all? You should absolutely check it out. So everything for Weave, which is an app-based RPG, they released it a few years ago. They're doing some platforming right now. I think Kyle would love to talk to you. I mean, if you reach out online, like he's pretty responsive. And they do every single version of their game on the back end is written in Markdown because they can give it to your average game designer and say, yeah, just put things in the tiles. Like here's a template that you can operate on. It's one of our simplest games. And you just have to replace this content with your content, and then we can put it in the app, make it work, and you can put your game on the Weave platform. They're doing some really, really amazing stuff right now and just moving some of that forward. But that said, it's all centralized through their app, and so if you're not on the Weave platform, there's that's the funnel there, right? And there's some. I think it's absolutely worth looking at. People should absolutely check out Weave. I'm a huge Weave fan. It was our $5,000 goal that we came like this shy of on Beards and Beyond was doing a playbook. Or doing a Weave version, but we're still going to do it eventually. We just didn't hit it, and so now I just have more time to not be doing it. Yeah, people forget about Weave all the time. Like it's such a really cool system, and I feel like they're doing some stuff with augmented reality and some other pieces, but it's not designed to be open source, and it's not designed to do a lot of the other things that you're talking about developing. And so like I said, I think it'd just be a really cool conversation for y'all to be able to have around what's connected and what's not. But yeah, it's absolutely a great resource. It's one of the few people I've seen actually pushing this conversation forward anywhere in the design field. And so, which again, another thing I wanted to chat a little bit about was just kind of like co-op models. Like we talked a little bit about how like the team approach, like, you know, trying to manage 21 people or 5 people or all these other things. But teams are something that's really important to me. Like I always tell people, like, whether it's the people who play in our games, whether it's, you know, people that I'm just in community with, like, everything that I've created on the Plus One platform is for other people. Like, I don't view Plus One as mine. Yes, I'm responsible for it. Yes, I'm the one who, like, at the end of the day, if there ever are checks, we'll collect those checks. There's not checks yet. like, like, uh, the, like, yes, I understand all that, right? But I created plus one for other people in the community. So the collaborative and cooperative model is something near and dear to my heart. And I would love to hear more kind of about how that's influenced what you do and some of the models that are out there that you're using that you've seen other people use well.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is that there's three different groups that I owe a lot of my thinking on this to. The Hydra Cooperative is one of the first co-ops I'd ever kind of heard of. And then talking to folks out of the San Gennaro co-op, particularly Sandy Pug Games, we've had some long conversations, and Basilisk have both humored me with lots and lots of questions. And then the third is, and they backed up like the things that I was feeling with like really good writing and information and links, was the Black Socialists in America. BSA has some really awesome resources, and they talk about these worker self-directed enterprises, right? WSDEs. And then they link to tons of background information. And BSA talks about the idea of dual power, right? Like, it's fairly easy, I think, for us to look at the state of like traditional corporation behavior in any space that we find important to ourselves, and then get frustrated and upset about how shitty they treat everybody involved, from the environment up. And then so the idea is like, well, you can't replace these extant structures overnight, right? They're not going anywhere, right? If everybody on RPG Twitter got together, we couldn't kill WotC. It's a behemoth that we just like, it's got too many hit points. We're not going to take it out.
Right.
But what we do instead is we build new infrastructure, lay down new modes and models, explore new spaces together, and build the roads and the houses and the shops that lead people away from the things that we think are unethical, or the organizations that we think are doing damage. And so I think that has a lot to do with kind of where my head has been at. Yeah, we could definitely try to kill WotC. And so when it comes to that, I started doing a little bit of looking last year, and I discovered, I don't know, halfway through writing Tempting Tefra, that Pentola has outgrown what I can alone get done, as in terms of like a setting in a game. And not only that, like, I want it to be a better product than a single person could put together.
Right.
And I believe very strongly after my years doing software development that like bringing in people whose experiences, voices, background don't match yours makes for better everything, from like conversations up to the thing that actually gets published. And so I decided that I didn't want to continue doing the development work without forming a cooperative. And I asked a bunch of people and gathered some information, and pulled in Pam Punzelin and Vida Ciavoletti, and we decided that we were going to form a small co-op, just the three of us for now. And so we started doing some of that work and background stuff, and we put together a pitch to a group called Platform 6, which is a cooperative whose mission statement is forming and helping other cooperatives. They're based out of the UK. And so what they do is like, they'll help you like get things going, and then they'll also help you kind of run things like, answer your questions, kind of be resources, and hook you up with other co-ops, right? So like the idea is like, you prefer to do business first with other co-ops. So if you can find a co-op printer, then you go to those folks, that kind of thing. Open Collective is a platform that seeks to kind of get around the problem of like, I want to do a thing for money. I don't want to have the money in my bank account until I'm paid out. Like if I have to pay other people and manage expenses and stuff, I don't want that cash to sit in my bank account. And then like at the end of the year, like, you made the money, now you must be taxed. Like, so what you do is you partner up with a fiscal host, and there's a couple in the States. There's one for open source software, which Platin will eventually probably be under. There's one for charities, and the Open Collective Foundation has been the fiscal host for like mutual aid programs and for food drives and a whole bunch of COVID relief stuff in this last year. Like they've really picked up slack and helped people. And then Platform 6 is actually a fiscal host as well. So we're able to form a cooperative, funnel our money into this platform, and have our fiscal host be Platform 6, have them hang on to the cash. And when we need to pay people out, they just submit an invoice, and then we can pay them out directly from that.
Wow.
And it doesn't sit in my bank account. It doesn't sit in, like, none of us are like on the hook for being like the one who has to take the tax burden or anything.
Right. I love that. We've been trying to figure out how to do, so we have an initiative called Plus One Forward, that's kind of the core of what we do at Plus One, which the entire vision is we just want, and you know, I tweeted out about it like a couple of months ago because we were starting our second project. I just wanted people to know like that it existed. And because I know that there's other people who are interested in it. But just basically saying like, hey, look, if you're a first time diverse, you know, or minority designer, like then sometimes the ability to say like, hey, look, you're far along in your game, but you don't know if anybody else believes in you. What if we gave you $200 to buy art, put together a playtest packet, you know, do a small print run so that you get your game out there in the world. There's a lot of times where that $200 to $400 can make a world of difference because it is a full print run. Like if you have a game that's done, but you just can't get it out there, like, and how are people accessing those? And the reality is for me, you know, a couple times a year saying I've got $200 or $300 and I'm just going to give somebody is huge. But then again, like I've got to figure out the taxes on that. I've got to like, you know, manage a whole lot of pieces of that are incredibly complex. And I also know that there are other people, some of who can do significantly more, who would love to kick in on that also. And so me taking that money in and then just giving it away doesn't necessarily make sense as a for-profit entity or as an individual, but having an organization I can work with that can take that on and say, hey, here's my $200, here's this person's $200, here's this person's $3, whatever it is, you know, like, can you hold on to it until we tell you, give it to this person, give it to this person, give it to this person. That's huge. Like that's a huge kind of shift. Cause I've basically just been like, yeah, my accountant's just going to hate me next year. Like that's what's going to happen.
That's how I've been too.
So,
and it's good that you brought up like those community help efforts, so where it's not exactly business expenses, right?
Right.
And it's hard to like necessarily put it into that category, but like we explicitly put it in our mission statement for the Gondolieri Co-op that we're there to help both like directly with the scene where we'll buy software and like tooling and stuff for people, and we'll help fund projects and like that sort of thing, but also indirectly, because I personally know five since January 1st of this year, 5 different people have needed help to stay housed. And we've you know raised money or tried to help people with that. 3 in the first week of the month, which was just great. First week of the year. And so I think that's another important thing that co-ops kind of can do, is pool cash together to help people when that stuff happens, right? Because selfishly, right, if you like art, if you like games, people who go unhoused make a lot less art and games. It turns out that it's one of those requirements is that you're not terrified that you're going to have to find a place to sleep tonight. Yeah. But more than that, like, so many people in our scene have been there and they get that pain and that fear, and they don't want anybody else to go through it. And so being able to like quickly throw together itch bundles and stuff for that, I think has been really cool. And it's great to see that the community comes together to help each other. It just sucks that they have to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I mean, I guess it's always one of those things where I'm kind of torn a little bit too. It's like art is a sign and a requirement for human flourishing, right? Like you were just saying, the ability to do those things. If people can't do that, there's obviously a sign of some sort of imbalance that's happening there. And how do we as a community rally around that? And the fact that, like, I mean, we could talk about, like, we'll probably quickly shift out in just a second so we don't just get lost down this rabbit hole. But like the fact that like GoFundMe's are one of the most, like, the largest offerings of essentially insurance or medical support in our country, in the US right now, is kind of a travesty. But also, like, historically, you know, growing up in the South, moving to Seattle, like in Texas, moving to Seattle, and then now living in Philly, seeing three very real different parts of the country. Like the assumption in the South is that, like, well, private industry will help people through its largeness, which, yes, but right, at a very limited amount, at a very abused level. If you know somebody, it's easier to get access to those resources. Then you have, like, Seattle is very much like, well, the state can help, by having all these services, but those services are unwieldy, have a lot of bureaucracy, and are very hard to navigate also in their own right. And then you live places like Philly where there's a strong mix of both private industry and things. And at the end of the day, it's like, hey, what typically helps people is those others who care about them and who are willing to get involved and who are willing to do something direct for that individual. The problem is when you don't have those people, and there's far too many individuals in the world who don't know who the person near them who is safe, who can help them are. And so like it gets me super excited thinking about co-op, not just as a publishing model, but as a way to address some cultural realities that we see as prevalent in our community as game designers and in our world as a thing right now. I think it's huge. Yeah. And most GoFundMe's fail to reach their target. Benjamin just reminded me. And so that's it's huge. Like it's a massively challenging thing. And it's cool to think about business models that drive that better. And it's really funny when people are always like, well, as long as like you inject virtue into capitalism or communism, it's like, well, what's virtue? Like, I mean, who's defining it? And then also, yeah, sure, for anything, right? You can inject virtue into anything if we have a common agreed upon stance for that, and it's going to work well. Co-ops actually force you to operate underneath a little bit more of an elegant and equitable like reality as far as how we define what good for us and others are.
Yeah, one of the ways that I think, again, it was BSA maybe who framed it this way that really stood out to me is they're like, we don't accept unjust hierarchies in our government. Why do we accept them in our workplace? Right. Like if you told me that somebody was going to be a king next year, I'd be like, no. But we have so many executives in leader positions. They're not elected. They don't represent you. You have no input on who they are, what they do. And so one of the ideas of a worker self-directed enterprise is that you bring democracy and choice back down to the people who are doing the work. One of the things that I talk about quite a bit with people is like, and we were joking about it on Twitter earlier today, in fact, is like if the CEOs were forced to pay you roughly the labor, the value of your labor, right? Well, then they wouldn't take home billions of dollars a year in monies. Because it turns out like they would take the value that they put in, which I think would be very sad for most C-suite people that I've ever run into. They'd be very upset to find that out when they got their check at the end of the year. But I think one of the things about co-ops is that it kind of goes alongside that dual power idea again, right? Like you can't wait for the state to come and save you. You can't wait for a company to come and save you. But what you can do is build networks of mutual aid right now together. Take care of the people around you, answer when people are hurting and need help, and just sort of take the time to approach things just a little bit differently, right? Like, because everything that we're talking about, like co-ops doing, is stuff that WotC could do, but never will, right? The incentives are all misaligned for that. They are solidly built on a traditional corp. And I didn't know, and I don't know, anybody who's watching may already know this, but do you know what the first corporation as the structure that we know of a corporation was?
Oh, I couldn't even guess.
I'll give you a clue. It's the Something India Company. Now when you think about that for 30 seconds and you ask yourself, is the best way for us to organize ourselves to do work the way that a bunch of people murdering and stealing stuff from indigenous folks, is the organization that was best for that best for making games or for anything else? Probably not, unless your goal is to extract resources from people, right? If that's the goal, then it's a pretty good setup for that.
Or at worst, to treat people as resources.
Right, because it's both. Because they want to extract the external resources, but also the internal resources. Because for sure, the people that were behind the East India Company and the West India Company, Dutch and English both, didn't necessarily want to pay the sailors.
Right.
Like they have to. They can't get around not paying the sailors, but they don't want them to take.
But they can pay you half now and half on return, which means that they can also bank on the fact that when your ship goes down in the middle of the ocean, they recouped expenses. Like they didn't necessarily lose out on anything as long
And
as you
some
didn't
of them,
have
like half
cargo.
of them are gonna die
Yeah.
of tropical diseases in
Yeah,
the
it's fine.
intervening hours too.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. You are
Benjamin
good.
says did not expect an anarchist theory lecture when I logged on, but very here for it.
I'm sorry.
And so no,
Sorry.
he said, but very here for it. No, I mean, like I said, I think this is one of the things that, and I think again, like looking at some of the different things you've got your hands in, like digital tools are a solution to how we do this better. One of the big problems for co-ops has always been, how do we organize? What do we do? Digital tools absolutely bring us there. They increase accessibility. They move us away from like concrete goods, which reduce cost and allow people better accessibilities. There's a lot of things that kind of working here together, and I think it's great. Dealer Umber says, "Good old historical megacorps, man, doing some sort of weird cyberpunk dystopian East and West India's trading company set back in the day of Age of Sail is the next game that needs to be designed by somebody."
I've been posting around to some friends that I have this idea for like hobgoblins versus the imperialists, where the dungeons are fortresses. And I think what would be a really cool idea maybe for that is that I shouldn't write it, but we should get people who had to deal with the India companies to write about the resistance movements, sort of taking inspiration from that for fantasy purposes. Because like the British showed up and they were like, we're going to build forts here and we're going to extract all your resources, and people fought back. And I like to think that a setting that flips the perspective that we usually get, right? Like if you read the Sharp novels, they spin it as like, yeah, the British doing stuff in India is good. And then like you think about it for a total of 9 seconds and you're like, no, it wasn't.
Right.
It's extremely awful. That's gross. And I think seeing it from the other perspective and funding development in those directions, that's one of the things I've been really interested in, honestly, has been not being involved, but throwing money at and giving space to and making sure that they get the visibility that they deserve. Decolonial stories and settings and games and works by the people who have been colonized and have suffered, both in the diaspora and then outside of the metropoles, both.
Great transition. By the way, tomorrow night we're playing Coyote and Crow, which is a Native American colonialism never happened in the U.S. Five Nations RPG. I am super excited about it. We've been talking to Connor and the team over at Coyote and Crow for a while. We're going to get to stream that tomorrow night, 8 p.m. EST. Please come back and watch us play that fun game. But yeah, I 100% agree. One of the things about that game that was the coolest, first of all, just again, the scale of collaboration, right? The pushing back against colonial themes, the fact that it was those who were colonial saying, no, this is our vision for what our future would have been like had this not happened. And then also it was one of the best early backer rewards on a campaign I've ever seen. I don't know if anybody's looked at the campaign or not, but I backed it right away. And the reason was like, I hate, like, I don't mind like first 45 backers get a sticker. That's fine. Early discounts on your product. Don't undervalue your product. Like it either costs what it costs or it doesn't. Don't reduce. You want to add something in, that's great, especially if it's digital content. I'm never going to be upset about that. Theirs was 4 or 5 recipes by an award-winning Native American chef if you backed in the first 48 hours. Like, and it's probably the coolest early backer award, and absolutely made me not say I'll just back it later in the campaign. When my wallet has recovered a little bit from Zine Quest, it was I want those 4 recipes. I'm gonna back now. Like, you know,
absolutely one of the coolest ideas I've ever heard of.
Yeah, and so absolutely, like, and again, saying what can you offer in your game that's thematic also, but then brings in these themes. But again, just as to what you were talking about, it was so hard to go right back to Kickstarter and back a big book project, but I absolutely did it because I'm just super excited for the team over at Connor. But yeah, we're playing that tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Cool.
For anybody who wants to come back and watch, or we'll have it up after the fact also too. Let's talk a little bit more. We've been talking for about 41 minutes. I've loved seeing some of the different conversations in the chat, but also let's talk a little bit about specifically how some of those things are manifest in what you're doing in your current project. So you've got Catalogue Chimerical up right now. You were one of the last few people to launch in Zine Quest proper, which, you know, now now no longer
Doesn't exist.
You've got like, and this is not to be a doomsayer. Absolutely, 100% people should go back this project. It's probably gonna be a squeaker if you guys hit it, right? Like you guys,
Yep.
You guys had a big goal. You guys came in with a later on in the game. I think it looks like a phenomenal project that I'm very excited about. And actually, I don't know that I've hit back as many times as I've talked about it. I don't know that I've hit back, so I'm gonna do that right now before I'm gonna pop it up. But you guys aren't gonna get to see my credit card number. But let's take a look at it. Talk to me a little bit about the game and about some of the plans you have for incorporating either how the co-op models worked into that, and then maybe what some of the digital tools you guys are using on the project also.
Yeah. So yeah, it's 144 system agnostic magic items, and the team is coming together again. This is a project that one person alone could not feasibly do, right? And so what we're doing is B Sherry is going to do a whole bunch of world building for me. And the perspective that this is being written from is a scholar from the nominal suzerains of Pentola, right? The overlords, the people who theoretically are the people that the Pentolans need to kneel to and pay homage upriver. I say theoretically because Pentola is a mega city at the mouth of a bay, and is their sort of trade hub between the upriver suzerains and everybody out on the sea. So you can only be so mean to them without sending in a whole bunch of soldiers to like occupy.
Yeah. Let me pause you real quick. Anybody who wants this, who's interested in looking at this game themselves, there's a link right below where Michael's face was, but at the very bottom that's that you can get to ttrpg.link/ I think it's Catalogue KS. Yeah, ttrpg.link/ Catalogue KS will take you right to this Kickstarter also too. But sorry to interrupt, Michael. I just wanted people to know how to actually go back this when they see it also too. But yeah, the keep on talking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. And so when we were spitballing about the world building, one of the things that this whole thing is written from the perspective of a single scholar from those suzerains. They're a theomagocracy, right? Like they fully believe that magic and their religious beliefs are completely intertwined. And so we spitballed a little bit back and forth, just kind of like batting some ideas around, and B came up with the incredible idea that I think we're definitely going to explore for the suzerains, the Eidenlard. They don't think the world is done being created, and they see themselves taking the sort of theological position of angels finishing creation. And so like that's why they are this sort of hierarchical imperial force that is very rigid and has these very set ideas about how things should look and be done and what you should do and how you should comport yourselves, because they are the agents of divinity, which of course clashes entirely with what Pentolans think, because Pentolans don't think any one thing at all. They're a riot of different cultures, as most coastal bay cities are, right? You get giant mixes of cultures from people who settle there. And so the idea is you have this scholar who comes from a very defined worldview. And one of the things that I've been interested in B's writing for forever is the idea of religious schisms and heresies and how things change. Because like, so often you'll read a tabletop religion section, and it's like, these are the 7 gods, and this is what they're the gods of, and this is how everybody feels about them everywhere. And you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like here on Earth, we can't agree on any one thing more than like 2,000 people at a time. So like that can't possibly be right. And so I really wanted to explore, how does this person's relationship to their faith, to their worldview change being in the city, and what do you learn about how they see Pentola through the way that they describe these items. So that was the first part. The second is that we're going to write these all from the same perspective. They're going to be written from the perspective of the cataloger. And so Persephone is actually on the team as both our character consultant and our sensitivity consultant. So we're going to get this overview from B that kind of talks about the world building and the religion and kind of all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to take that to inform the character design, and then write up 144 magic items as if they are the ones describing them for a mail order catalog. Our original hope was that we would fund high enough to unlock an audiobook version, which would involve Persephone reading every single entry in the character of the cataloger, as well as we would write, co-write, and then she would narrate 12 diary entries in the character of the cataloger, which we may still come back to later. It doesn't seem very likely that we'll hit it in this campaign, but like, I think it's a cool idea, and I love audio content.
Yeah.
And then we've got Sam is going to be on board for doing our editing. They've had they're heading very much the same space as me as far as like gameable lore goes, and writing a ton of items. And so it'll be good to have somebody who's not me editing, because editing yourself is foolish, as I've learned several times over.
Right. Like the best you get with editing yourself is like, I read it again, I read it out loud again, and then now I can't see any more errors because I know what it's supposed to say. It seems
perfect to me. We've got Dai, who did layout for a whole bunch of stuff, including Liberté and the GMDK stuff, coming on to do layout and ensure that everything we write is PDF UA compliant. So fully screen reader and accessibility compliant, meets every single stipulation that there is, fully linked, etc. And then, of course, I built the whole campaign functionally around Aaron Radney's art. I saw Aaron's sketch style scroll across my Twitter, I think like a year and a half ago, and I was like, I got to do a project that builds on that. Like, whatever else I do, I need an excuse to pay Aaron money for this. And so, if we meet base funding, we will get 36 item illustrations from Aaron, which is 1/4 of the items in the zine, which will be one per page. If we overfund a little bit, we'll get one for every two, etc.
Right.
So my thing here is that just like the descriptions are written by the same person, I wanted the art to be sketches of these magical items from the same perspective of the cataloger. So I wanted to have one artist who would have one style to kind of like show you what all that looks like. And so that's what I'm really excited to be bringing and putting together. As far as digital tools go, I have a preview site up right now. I'm going to wait to buy the domain until we fund, if we fund. But right now, catalog-chimerical.netlify.app, I think, takes you to a website that currently holds all the bonus items I've written, and will eventually hold all the catalogs items as well as the bonus items, and have a randomizer page. So you go to the page and then you decide, like, I want one item or 3 items or whatever, and it'll just grab a whole bunch of stuff for you.
That's awesome.
I have to implement that, but that's on the to-do list. Yeah, and so when we publish, we're going to publish the items will show up in a couple different places. The first is that all of the text is going to be on the website. All of the text will also be in an EPUB, so that you can just read it nicely on your phone or whatever if you just want to go through that. And then we're going to do a artless PDF that is 18 pages. So because we don't have to leave any room for art, we can just kind of condense the amount down, just the text, so that you can print and keep it at your table. So you can just have a little booklet that way if you're doing print at home. And then there'll be the full art PDF version that'll have every sketch. And then again, if we fund enough, we'll have 2 separate audiobooks on Bandcamp.
That'd be awesome.
One for all the items and one for the diaries. And we'll probably post those up to the website too. I still need to think about how we want to make that work, but it should be feasible.
Cool. No, I'm super excited about it. I did go back, in case anybody's wondering. I did it right. I did it right now. So I just made sure everybody was not able to see my credit card information as we're going through. Though, if you really want it, there's a little bit of it on a number of streams. If you want to go hound down the last 4 digits of my credit cards. You can find them and steal my identity. And so, but it is up right now. It is about 2/3 of the way, maybe a little over, towards its funding goal. Last 48 hours. Hopefully we get a big pop. You guys can be a big part of making that happen. Just sharing it out. You can go back it yourself if you have not yet, just like I did, and then sharing it out on social, at any level, like backing at any level, backing for $1, backing for, a couple $100, whatever you want to do, whatever you're feeling. I went into that $24 level because I wanted the offset print option also too. And it's an absolutely gorgeous book. The art is incredibly captivating. Even just the icon work y'all did, like on the Kickstarter page, it's very simple, but it gives a lot of flavor and feel to the different kind of sample items you popped out, and every item you have popped out has been incredibly exciting. And we're going to get a couple more just for people having tuned in today. So you've got about 48 hours left in the campaign. You're in your last 2 days, right?
Yep. One thing I do want to call out, because I know wallets are so light right now. Kickstarter hit me as hard as it hit everybody else who might care about this. So we actually have a community copy model where buying copies at any level unlocks digital copies. We actually have a backer level called the Neighborhood Advocate that buys a bunch of additional digital copies and physical copies and throws those into the community copy pool. So we have both digital and physical community copies. If you back it at $1, if you don't have money for anything else, we have enough digital community copies that we can cover you down. I talked about this a little bit earlier this week, but conversations about a year ago with Fiona Geist had turned me on to the idea that like art is for everyone, games are for everyone, regardless of your fiscal situation, right? And especially, a year and change into COVID, a lot of people's finances are shaky at best. So not only do we have over 200 digital copies to give away, we also have over 40 physical copies. So right now, those physical copies are no cost to you except for shipping. If even shipping is a hardship, we're going to be talking to some people about maybe being able to get sponsors for paying for shipping. And if we have leftover funds, the Gondolieri Co-op will also be covering down some of that shipping.
Yeah, let me know, because we're happy to help cover some shipping to get them out to people also too.
Sure.
I'm incredibly excited. Again, I want to encourage people to go check it out. You can go to ttrpg.link/catalog, spelled the European way, KS, to get to check out the game. And please, if nothing else, if you can't back even at $1 right now, that's okay. Just sharing it online, helping other people discover the game, is absolutely great for backers. Tag us when you do it, and we will retweet or repost your thing. This at +1EXP. I'm sure Michael will refuse to share any posting online that you do. Michael,
I have a tweet thread up right now that has like another 5 ways to make me write bonus items if you'd like to see me suffer over the next 24 hours.
There we go. And this was one of them. So if you turned in today, you helped more items get made. I'm going to pull that list a little bit later and just give it to Michael. We'll find out how many people tuned in at different points today. But Michael, again, if people want to find not the Kickstarter, you can do that at the link below. But your work and follow you, where's the best place to find you online?
Yep. So you can find me on Twitter at TrebuchetOps. You can find me on itch, michaeltlombardi.itch.io. You can find me on LeanPub, actually, which is where I put all my collaborative stuff, because it does revenue sharing automatically, so I don't have to like do payouts for people. So if you look on there, if you just go to LeanPub and look for Beneath the Canals, or if you look for Tempting to Fra, you'll find both of those there.
Very cool. Well, I've been excited to have you on. I've got a couple more questions for you after we go off to talk about how we can support you. If y'all have any more questions, go ahead and type them into the chat below. Benjamin wants to know how else would you spell it? Here, I think a couple of people are trying to drop it into chat. Let me do that real quick, because I think we have it. We had a bunch of spammers at one point, so we had to turn off the ability for people to post links into the chat. Link/catalog KS. Let's see if I did it right. That looks correct. There we go. I'm gonna click on it. That works.
That's a good way to find out.
That is like Yeah, please go share it. And we'd love to support it. If you're out there, if you're a creator, if you want to come on sometime, talk about design, we'd love to have you on. We also do actual plays, reviews, previews of people's games. We don't think that creators should have to pay us for creating content for them. We do it all for free. We just partner with them if we do extended content to do a couple giveaway copies. So we're always happy to have different small creators of any size on. We will have some ways you can support us financially in the future, mainly just to pay our editors and our graphic designers. I don't like, it doesn't bother me to hop on and do this for free, but I do like to pay the people who make all the things happen. So keep an eye out for that in the future. But in the meantime, you can hit us up at +1EXP. Anything you buy at +1EXP.com, whether that's our games, anything else like that, all goes back into the tabletop community and helps to, again, support those same staff members that we have working hard to make the content come out also, too. We're a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard and skincare alchemy, and the Bardic College of Content Creation. We're so glad that you were here with us today. This has been Prestige Class with Michael Lombardi, and Vi is the one who helped us come up with this sign-up. It's the only show we have a sign-off for. I'm going to give credit, at least for the foreseeable future. But this has been Prestige Class. Class dismissed. We'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much, Michael, for coming on.
Thanks.